It actually all started in the spring of 2020, even before the last school year ended. In the spring, I attended tons of information sessions and research sharing sessions and meetings to just learn about, how people are making music through the pandemic and what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. The OMEA, the OBA, the CBA, the Manitoba Band Association, the TDSB, and the CBDNA. I went to so many different acronym meetings, and just to kind of arm myself with all of the research that I needed and all of the ideas that I could use in the fall of 2020. So I reviewed a lot of research in the summer, and I helped the OBA develop our advocacy statement and message. I kept informed as the research was changing. I kept up with that. Students, when we finished school in June, I asked my students to keep their instruments at home. I did not want them back. So those students who were continuing on in music, I asked them, just keep the instruments at home. If you're taking music next year, you'll be using that exact same instrument, so that unless it was broken, they were allowed to bring it back to me. So they kept their instruments, and I think that helped a lot with opening in the fall. In the summer, I planned quite a bit. I also sourced out buckets for bucket drumming. So from Rona and Kawartha Dairy, my neighbors probably think I'm crazy washing ice cream buckets at the side of my street, but at the side of my driveway, but you got to do what you got to do. I attended a lot of PD sessions for how to teach music virtually. I prepared myself with a great webcam and a decent microphone. And I found a ton of ideas on Facebook groups and websites, and including free music for bucket drumming and drumline, which I had planned on introducing in the fall. In the fall, I have an amazing admin team. My vice principal is a former music teacher, band and vocal, and she was willing to share my class lists with me for the entire year. So I was able to get an inventory of who I had coming into my courses and who needed instruments, because I already had the list of students who had their instruments at home already. So for the month of September, I worked my tail off and I tracked down all of my students, got them all band instruments by the end of September. So that was great. I had the students all join Google Classrooms, even though their course might not have been until right now, until April or May. And they all had reeds, mouthpieces, and everything by the end of September. So that was a really big job to get out of the way in September, but it actually set me up for success for the rest of the year, because it was one thing out of the way when it did come time to introduce the new class and the new quadmaster. Didn't have to worry about getting anybody instruments. When I found out that the TDSB was going to a quadmastered format, I had to prepare 3-hour and 45-minute classes for each cohort, which is a long period of time. And yes, you can build in breaks, but it is a long time with one particular group of students on one subject. It's more than I've ever done before in my entire career. So I decided that bucket drumming and percussion ensemble would be the way to go with my in-person cohorts. And everybody at that point that I was teaching in September was in person. We started hybrid teaching towards December and January. But I got my classroom set up with 17 stations, tape on the floor, got them all 6 feet by 6 feet. Each station had a bucket with sticks. They had either a snare drum, a bass drum, concert toms, a field drum, or a mallet instrument in the station. They all had their own mallets that were color coded for their cohort, and so there was absolutely no sharing of equipment between this cohort and the second cohort. I decided to make my band block. I decided to keep my afternoon sessions as a band block. And in the TDSB, we had our afternoon sessions that were virtual. So we had a 75-minute period in the afternoon, and that I wanted to dedicate to band. So every time we had an afternoon class, it would be let's play. and we would play as much as we could, and as much as the students could, because they're all coming from different situations. They have siblings learning from home, they have parents working from home on meetings, so they did what they could do in that time. If they had to just do fingerings one day, that's fine. If they couldn't play over their microphone, that's okay. You have to be very flexible, I think, and sympathetic to the situation and very adaptable. Our asynchronous time, I had to also plan for about 3 hours of asynchronous time. And that we did a lot of listening, some music theory, some composition, but the majority of the time was dedicated to practicing and working on the skills that we worked on in bucket drumming, percussion ensemble, and in our band classes. Our repertoire class at the beginning of the year was canceled due to so many teachers being pulled from our school to virtual school and to other schools in the board. So our repertoire classes were canceled, and so we started a virtual band, which was just more like a club, and that started in October. And I had a good 70 students in that ensemble for the year, so that was exciting. So they still wanted to continue do more band in the afternoon after the school day was finished.
The first thing that I did was I made sure I was connected with other music teachers, excuse me, in Sudbury. So other secondary school music teachers. We have a tight-knit music community here, so I was able to draw on that. And one of the first things we did was set up a Google Classroom to share resources just within us, music teachers, and we still add to it and use it on a daily basis. I was able to meet with the superintendent and the school board's health and safety officer to review specifications of the music room, to see that it met safety protocols, to go over specific safety protocols, for example, being masked when the students were playing their instruments, and the use of bell covers. I was set up with a medical grade air purifier supplied by board health and safety. So those are a lot of physical preparations that I had to make. Another physical preparation was, just moving furniture to accommodate for the social distancing that was required to take place, and realizing that no music room that I've ever been in would be able to necessarily accommodate such dimensions. So trying to figure out how can we best manage that with what we have. I did a lot of planning on how to move concert band online for our first 6 weeks of school. We weren't permitted to play our instruments until our music PPE arrived. So our music masks didn't arrive until, I believe it was at least 6 weeks into the school year. So trying to move concert band online for the first 6 weeks was a main challenge, because the students didn't sign up for virtual band and had never had that experience. I did rearranging of our cleaning and sanitizing stations to ensure that there was nothing being shared, like the mouthpiece scrubbers or the communal sanitizing bowl. Now, students don't share instruments or mouthpieces anyways, but they frequently liked to clean them. So I made individual cleaning bottles and sanitizers. I had to prepare student music folders and method books so that students weren't touching everything. Typically, they had a large role in helping to get that music room set up, but that just fell to me this year. Updated my instrument inventory, labeled instruments with masking tape for students' names to be put on them, and created a ton of sign-in sheets if there was a student who stopped by who wasn't typically in one of my courses. For contact tracing purposes, I could log who was in and out of that room. What else did I do? I installed a clothesline so students could hand wash their music masks and leave them to dry. So I wasn't at all confident that all the masks would be brought back if students were left to bring them home. And I wanted to ensure that every opportunity that they had to play, they were allowed to. So we planned to clean and do all of that in the music room. And then I sat down. So after all those physical preparations were done, that was the main thing. I planned how to run a program with zero budget, which was the main challenge, which ultimately rolled into a conversation with a very supportive band parent who came on board to help with instrument repairs and other such things. So a lot of physical preparations happened. There was only so much planning for the actual program delivery that could happen. I've been doing this for, well, quite some time now. So I have a lot of resources at my disposal, but it was more the physical planning and how do we make everybody safe in the classroom and then adapt as we go.
As soon as the pandemic hit, I kind of went into high gear. And, I knew obviously this was going to be challenging for music. So immediately I put myself on a COVID back to campus team at our school. So we had several meetings and spoke through, many scenarios. It helped inform me about what I needed to do, what I needed to research and figure out. So after that, it was pretty much educating myself and attending as many things as I could, Zoom events, checking out websites. I immediately came upon the aerosol study put on at the University of Colorado. I followed that very closely. They were getting some promising results, and I was documenting this, of course. And some of the various Zoom events that really helped me compile information and speaking with other educators through many of our band chapters, including the Ontario Band Association, Manitoba Band Association, Saskatchewan Band Association. There's the Conselmer. What else did I attend? There were, several local educators or from the US also were putting on events, how to run an online rehearsal and things like that. So basically it was educating myself, and I did a lot of that over the summer, a lot of work with that. In August, I decided to put together a document and to gathering all the information that I had. I was feeling pretty confident that I could deliver music safely with wind instruments. Put this together in a document and contacted my admin, the head of my senior school. Presented this to him, and I was very lucky to get the okay. Yeah. So once that was kind of, I was given the green light, I suppose, then the more of the bigger work, I think, kind of began at that point. It was, okay, ordering the masks, ordering the bell covers, informing parents, putting together a document for parents. So this was all done in August. I wanted to be ahead of the game and making sure everybody's feeling confident and knows what exactly to do in order to feel safe and confident going back into class. So many emails over the summer. And then there was also, the fact that I also teach a beginning music class in grade 9, and how that was going to work, because usually, we have them in class and they try out some instruments and we sterilize them and they try them out. Obviously, this could not happen. So I had to come up with a plan, and I put together an email. I did some more research. An interesting, a bit of a side note here. Another resource that I found was very helpful. I belong to several Facebook groups, band director groups, and the OMEA potluck resource group and things like that. And those gave me nuggets of information and ideas to draw upon. But yeah, basically August was putting this together, getting the okay, and then getting documents and information out to students so they could be ready for September, and feel safe coming back. And of course, in the background, I'm also trying to think how I'm going to plan my year, and I needed to completely reconstruct that, and I ordered some flex charts, and decided to purchase a subscription to Smart Music, which I had never done before. I used the free version back at the beginning of the pandemic because Smart Music opened that up, which was really nice. So I decided to go ahead and use that. It was a great tool for students to learn independently, because our entire format of offering courses was going to change. So instead of seeing, my regular classes every second day, I was now only seeing them once every 4 school days. And one of those days I would see them in person, and the other next 4 days I would see them again would be online. So I was teaching hybrid online and in person at the same time. So actually having them play live for me in class was not going to happen very often. So part of what I decided to do, which carried over from spring 2020, was getting them to upload some videos, practice videos using Flipgrid, and that was a way they could continue to be motivated to play, knowing that I would look at it, and also maybe share with each other and share with the class as well.
I revisited why I took music in high school and why I think kids take music in high school now, and they take music to play. Um, the barrier this year was there would be no product of their playing uh, unless we were to do one of the compilation videos, which a lot of teachers have done. We haven't done that because I wanted to focus more on the process of learning music moreover than the product therein. Because we spend so much time in a regular school year saying it's a G sharp, it's an F sharp, no, that rhythm's wrong, this is wrong, sounds good, but you do this better, bring out the trumpets, this and that. There was none of that this year, and as much as I missed that rehearsal bit, it was kind of nice to actually teach students how to recognize, well, teach them more how to recognize patterns, go more in depth with how a piece of music is constructed, maybe talk more about why a piece of music was written. You can still do all that in your typical rehearsal, but you can do more of it because there's no performance coming up. You're not stressed by any kind of date. December 7th is our Christmas concert or winter concert. In like, okay, great, but we don't have that this year. So we were able to focus on the civil rights movement or Black Lives Matter or whatever we were talked about this year, and it was kind of cool because you see the kids in a different way through music still, but instead of that third clarinet player struggling to play, well, my holy cow, they can really eloquently make their point have their point come across by just speaking. So and then maybe your first clarinet player who can play anything can't really articulate what they're thinking. So it's a cool way of getting to know the students in a different way. So all summer I was kind of thinking like, how can I give them kind of the same experience? I was able to give every student an instrument. And so in York Region, we were this adaptive model where you saw them in class, but you also had them online. I know there's the octamestering and the quadmestering and all that. We were different. We saw every student every day of the semester, which is great because that's what you want. You want to have consistent exposure to the students. And so we were able to play every day. If they were at home learning online, they had their tuba in their hand or their flute or whatever. And they played scales and they played articulation studies. They did a bit of chamber music just with themselves, and they would do their own 4-part recording and try if on an app or something. And we had some success with that. I just kind of strayed away from that after I realized how technologically challenging some things are for some kids. So we focused again more on the process of learning and technical mastery of their instrument instead of kind of like a musical mastery.